Good morning, Jane. How are you?
Good morning, Rover.
When you write a book like this, do you actually, this is my first question, do you actually write it all yourself? Do you compile stuff and do you tell it to someone?
It's
Do they write
a team effort.
Yeah.
It's a team effort because I'll tell you why. It was a very fast turnaround. I was writing it while I was reporting on it at the trial. So what I have is I had a trusty Radio Shack tape recorder, and I was tape recording all the interviews with the victim, Travis Alexander's friends outside court, who were telling me different stories than what Jodi Arias was telling on the stand. And I also actually transcribed those interviews myself because I sent them out to a transcriber, and they kept coming back inaudible, inaudible, inaudible. So I was up all night transcribing interviews. And then we had somebody else who was laying out the structure of the case using the transcript because we had a trial log.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have an editor. So it was a team effort to turn this book around as quickly as it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing just, I mean, my Lord, the thing just ended.
All the original reporting.
You are by trade, you're a television reporter, right? You're not, are you an attorney or do you have any law background?
No, people think I'm an attorney, but I'm not.
So you just, because you've become sort of synonymous with you and Nancy Grace with these trials and whatnot. So I guess I never knew if you were a lawyer or not. I almost probably assumed that you were. How did you get involved in doing these courtroom cases specifically? Or were you just a reporter that did everything at one point?
Yeah, I was a reporter. I mean, I've been a reporter for a long time. I've worked in Fort Myers, Florida, Minneapolis, Philadelphia, New York, Los Angeles. And what happened was, at one point, I got a chance to do this show, Celebrity Justice. My friend Harvey Levin, who is now runs TMZ,
Mm-hmm.
he's an old buddy of mine, and he said, I'm starting a show, this is before TMZ, called Celebrity Justice. And by that time, if I had to cover another fire or another one of these car chases, I was just like done. So I said, yeah. And everybody told me, you're making a grave mistake. That show's going to be in the air for 13 weeks, and then you're going to be out of work forever. And I said, well, you know what? Life's too short. I want a new adventure. So I went to Celebrity Justice, which was a syndicated show, and it was great. It was on for 3 years. I covered the Michael Jackson child molestation trial,
Mm-hmm.
and I was living in Santa Maria, California for 6 months covering that crazy case. I don't know if you remember it, with the fans, the Michael Jackson fans.
Sure, of course.
They would have like rocks with our names on it. They would throw at us when we walked into court. It was a lot of fun. Anyway.
By the way, do you think he was guilty of that stuff or not guilty?
You know, Michael Jackson is one of the most fascinating characters in the history of entertainment, probably in the 20th century, because you couldn't tell. He was so charismatic, even in his frail state, that the reporters who even despised him would become completely gaga when he smiled at them. And sorry about that noise. That's coffee grinding.
That's all right.
But he was so charismatic that I remember once he looked at me from across the courtroom because we both got there early, and it was just me and him and the bailiff. And he looked at me and goes, "Nice smile." And I just was like, "Oh, Michael Jackson."
Jane's
nice
like,
smile.
"Wow."
I couldn't help myself.
He's smiling at me.
I don't know if he was. He is a mystery wrapped in an enigma. I mean, I have no idea at the end of the day. I do believe that the family that accused him in that trial, they were lying.
But let's talk about Jodi Arias, this book that you've written. Now there's no doubt in your mind or anyone else's mind, she was just a pathological liar from
Yes.
A to Z.
Pathological.
She, what is this one of the most fascinating cases that you've covered, Jane?
Totally. I have to tell you, it was one of the hardest things I've done in my career because you have the ultimate unreliable narrator. You are writing a book, and you have to question every single thing that the only person who's left alive has to say. So that was excruciating. And there were arguments. There were arguments over everything because, you know, there's just this innate sense that, well, if somebody says they ordered a Frappuccino, just accept it. But everything she says is so doubtful that quite often we would have these big, long discussions about, no, you can't accept that as fact. Like, for example, she told all these stories about how she was sexually degraded by Travis Alexander. Oh, he baptizes her, and then he takes her home, and he rips off her sacred Mormon garments and forces her into anal sex or pressures her into painful anal sex. It probably didn't happen. I talked to Travis's friend Sky Hughes, who said, I was at that baptism, and I seem to remember, it was more than 5 years ago, but I seem to remember we all came over to my house afterwards. So you have to really question everything. And when somebody is such a gifted liar that they present it in such a clear way with all sorts of details about exactly how he ripped off the clothes, and there's this tendency to believe it.
Why do you think she was such? I mean, what do you think happened to this woman, or do you think she was just born this way?
She suffers from borderline personality disorder, and that is a fascinating illness. Now, there are borderlines that get treated, so I don't want to malign all borderlines, but if left untreated, what happens is they don't know who they are when they wake up in the morning. Like, I know I'm Jane, you're Rover. She has no idea who she is. So she attaches herself. They have a shallow sense of identity. They're not grounded in the world. So what they do is they try to attach themselves to somebody to get a sense of identity. That's why she converted to Mormonism so quickly. That's why she adopted all his friends, and she adopted his hobbies, and she got really entrenched in his career, this prepaid legal network marketing company. Her world was Travis's world. And that's why it was so threatening to her when he rejected her and decided to take another woman to a big, big shindig in Cancun where all of their mutual friends would be. So that was really unacceptable to her. But beyond that, she was so obsessed with him that I think she was the one who initiated all the sex, because what borderlines do is they want to merge with the other person. Mm-hmm. So the urge to merge is so powerful. What better way to merge than to have sex? So she's the one who wanted to have sex all the time. She's the one who initiated the kinky sex games. She's the one who taught an innocent Mormon who knew nothing about sex. He didn't even know KY jelly existed, and he says that on the sex tape until he met her. He was completely naive. She's the one who brought all these S&M games to the party.
Well, there's a tip to guys. If you're looking for some kinky sex, go for a girl with borderline personality disorder. Just be careful, because there's a lot of baggage that goes along with it. Let's talk about Jane Velez-Mitchell for a minute. And here's this is a tidbit. Now, I see you on TV all the time, Jane, and this is the first time my producer gives me a whole packet on you. I'm reading through it, as I'm sure you do when you have guests on. You do a quick little background on them.
Sure.
I always thought Jane Velez-Mitchell, I thought, okay, so she must have been Jane, Velez, and she married some guy named Mitchell, and she didn't want to, get rid of her name. But that's actually your parents' names, correct?
Yes. My dad was Pierce Mitchell. He's deceased now. He died in the 80s. And my mom is Anita Velez. But she actually, when she married my dad, became one of the early hyphenates. So she is Anita Velez-Mitchell. And so I'm Jane Velez-Mitchell. I decided that Jane Mitchell, which was my born name, really didn't express myself. Mm-hmm. It didn't express who I really was. And it always felt a little bit like I was pretending to be somebody I wasn't. And so I was in therapy, actually. I think everybody should go to therapy. This is many years ago. This is back in the early 80s. And I was talking to my therapist about this. And, people would always come up to me and say, oh, you got such a great tan. I'm like, this isn't a tan. This is me. So I said, my mom's a hyphenate. And she goes, well, why don't you just do what your mom did, to be a hyphen? And I said, oh, that's great. So that's what I did. I added my mother's name to my name, and I love it. The second I did it, I felt more comfortable. I was like, okay, this expresses who I am. My mom's Puerto Rican. My dad was Irish. And so I feel like that name expresses me.
What were you in therapy for back in the 80s?
Well, I'm a recovering alcoholic. I have 18 years of sobriety. And like a lot of people who have a drinking problem, what I did first was I went to a therapist. My niece actually suggested it. She went to she goes to a therapist and went at that time. And, she noticed that I was drinking too much. She said, Jane, you need to do something and go to a therapist. So I did. But the problem is, and it was great. It was great for me to get to know myself. You know, I think people who don't do therapy are like flying blind. Most of our motivations are unconscious. 90% of the things we do, our unconscious is guiding us. We come up with, we create intellectual reasons for why we're doing what we're doing, but really we're guided by the unconscious. So it was helpful, but one thing I'll say to all people who have any kind of a drinking, drug, food problem, therapy is good, but you need to go into a 12-step program. So I did therapy for a number of years while I was working on it. And that's a great excuse for an alcoholic to keep drinking while they're working on the problem. And the problem only got worse because that's not the solution to alcoholism or drug addiction or food addiction or any of the other addictions out there. The solution is to surrender to the fact that you are completely powerless over the drug of choice, powerless. And so finally, I did surrender 18 years ago, and I haven't had a drink since.
April 1st, 1995 was was her last drink of alcohol. And so in my packet here, it says that you had gone crazy at a party the night before. You woke up and you go, oh, my God, I can't believe what I did last night. Now, what is not included in my packet is what the hell happened at this party? What did you do that was so crazy that you wake up and go, oh, my God, I need to quit drinking?
Well, I actually was drinking. Well, there's certain drinks that I could never drink that I shouldn't have ever had. And I was okay if I drank white wine, but if I drank tequila, all bets were off. And that's what happened, is that there was a lot of tequila at that party. So what happened is I blacked out. And that's what alcoholics do. I mean, anybody who's listening, because I like to share my experience, strength, and hope, in the hopes that people who are listening who might have a problem know that there's a solution and you can be happy, joyous, and free of that horrible, horrible disease one day at a time by getting help through a 12-step program. But I went into a blackout. If you go into a blackout, you're an alcoholic. That's it. So people say, oh, I'm not an alcoholic, but if you've had a blackout for 2 or 3, you're an alcoholic. And so I don't remember, but I was told that I kicked the host down the stairs. I thought it was funny, but it apparently was not. And then I was kind of escorted out of the party. So that was it. I just woke up the next day and I was like, that incomprehensible demoralization that the addict feels, that the alcoholic feels. I was lucky. I never got a DUI. I never got arrested. But
that's amazing that you were able.
You know, it's
yeah, because you were 38 when you quit drinking, so that's pretty good that you never got a DUI or anything horrible.
Never. Well, I was careful because I was in the news business.
Right.
My attitude was there were, back in the day there were a lot of people who drank heavily in the news business, and then one day it all changed, and it was like it got corporate, and all of a sudden those old characters that I used to hang out with, those days were gone. I worked with some of the famous people in local news, like Jerry Dunphy, and I knew Roger Grimsby, and these were characters who were just out of the old school, the old hard-charging and hard-drinking journalists. But that day is over, and that's not acceptable anymore.
Jane,
and I'm so happy I left that behind for many reasons. I mean, as they say in sobriety, my worst day sober is better than my best day drunk. So it's just a great life to wake up every morning and know what you did yesterday and feel like, you don't have to worry. I mean, I worry very little, much less than I used to, because I know that there's only so much that my girlfriend just looked at me and gave me a dirty look. She's like, yeah, really? No, I worry a lot less than I used to, because I used to always wonder, well, am I in trouble? And, there's only so much trouble you can get into when you're not drinking.
This is
very, very, very much less trouble than when you're drinking.
This is something else that I learned about Jane Velez-Mitchell. I had no idea. I just learned this morning. You mentioned your girlfriend. Is this your live-in girlfriend? I had no idea that you were a lesbian. No clue.
Yeah, I'm out. If you look at my Wikipedia page, I'm just on a parade holding the flags. This was part of the therapy process. I was really drinking down my sexuality.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, I bet it was difficult as a child or as you're growing up. It's probably confusing, and then you start drinking or doing whatever just to sort of cope with that. You ended up getting married to a guy even.
I was married married to my best friend, and he's still a good friend of mine.
Did he have any idea when you were married, like, Jane may be a lesbian?
Yeah, I think I always kind of knew, but the ability to suppress something like that is it takes a lot of work. It's almost like alcoholism because, an alcoholic, their first love is alcohol and everything else comes second. And that's why the family comes second, the kids come second, the spouse comes second. Well, it's the same thing when you're repressing your sexuality. It's a full-time job. They call it walking around in a vertical casket. And believe you me, I gave it my all. I really tried hard to be a heterosexual. I tried. I was determined. I got married. I had a big wedding. I really wanted to be straight. I really did. I'm not.
How long have you been with this girlfriend of yours now?
We've been together about two years. We met at the Conrad Murray trial in Los Angeles, and through some friends, not part of the trial, but just out when I was out in L.A. covering that. And it's really great to just be able to be who you are. That's what it's all about in life, is just to figure out who you are. Life's a journey of self-discovery. And, I've changed so much. They say in sobriety, the only thing that has to change is everything. And since you've gotten real personal, one of the most important changes for me was becoming a vegan and giving up meat. And, people have asked me, well, are you campaigning for the death penalty for Jodi Arias? I said, no. I said, I don't believe in violence. I don't eat meat. I don't wear leather. I don't believe in killing, so I don't kill animals. And the average person, consumes, 250 animals. Although I will tell you, your hamburger is probably a mixture of, it can be up to thousands of animals.
Well, I actually, Jane, I'll tell you, I don't believe in. I'm a 37-year-old guy. I'm such a pussy that I don't even like killing. Like if there's a spider, I'll put it on a piece of paper and I'll put it outside of my front door. Every now and then I do have to smash it. Like if it's upstairs, I'm like, look, dude, you're in my space. Sorry, you're getting smashed. But I don't like killing anything either. But you know what? That seems like it's a lot of work to become a vegan and give up meat, and it just.
No, it's so much fun. It takes 30 days for your palate to cleanse. And once it's over, once it was over, somebody put a Parmesan cheese on my salad, and I tasted it, and your taste buds change. And now I wake up, and I have a fantastic smoothie, a banana, an avocado, frozen berries, and then I put in this great powder that's like a combination of superfoods like kale powder. It's called Vega, and it's what marathon runners use. And then I add some flax seeds, and I add some chia seeds, and it's delicious. I put some non-sweetened jam, because I also gave up sugar. I put some non-sweetened jam in there and a little stevia powder and blend it up. Actually, my girlfriend does this for me. But it's so delicious. It's like a pudding. It's like a superfood. And here's the problem. Americans, 2/3 of Americans are overweight or obese. I've always struggled with my weight. But I wrote this whole other book called Addict Nation about how basically what's happening now is we're all food addicts. 2/3 of Americans are food addicts. And I'm one of them, and that's why I cut out the bad food playing field. So you can, food is the hardest addiction because you have to go in there every day and eat.
Yeah, you need food, right? You don't need to drink alcohol or snort cocaine, right?
Yeah.
Let me ask, Jane Velez-Mitchell is on with us. There's one more thing I want to ask you, and her new book is called Exposed: The Secret Life of Jodi Arias. You can get this in stores now. And I watch on HLN these trials that, whatever the big trial of the day is, for instance, like the George Zimmerman thing. And don't take this the wrong way. I'm sure that you guys probably have discussions in television news industry, but they have like recreations, or for the Jodi Arias case, they have like sets where they recreate the bathroom, or in the Zimmerman case, they have a set where they recreate the courtyard. And they've almost turned this into a spectacle, like we're watching a football game or something. And again, don't take this the wrong way, but I looked at this. I've talked about it on the air, and there's something disturbing about it to me, because this is not a football game. This is not an athletic event. These are real people, real lives, these people's lives hang in the balance that are on trial. People have ended up dead in many cases. And it just seems to me that when I see this, I go, this is pure entertainment. Yes, we're consuming it as Americans. We love this kind of stuff, but it's somewhat disgusting. And I know you make your living doing it, and I make my living talking about other people, so I'm not, I'm not holier than thou or anything. But, I mean, do you have these sort of discussions, or do you think about those sorts of things?
I think we all, examine what we're doing all the time, and it's really a trade-off. I think it's great that there are TV cameras in the courtroom, and people have really gotten an education in the criminal justice system, how it works, what's wrong with it. And the problem is if you just play the court trial like as a raw feed, it's not practical. You've got to break it up, and you've got to make it digestible. And so this is sort of like cooks in the kitchen, preparing it so that people can really understand it and appreciate it. Oh, did I mention I have 3 dogs?
I can hear them.
You know me today.
They're all vegan too, right?
Quiet. Beg your pardon?
They're all vegan too, right?
They're hey, I got them down to pescatarian. They eat fish, but I'm working at the vegan part. There are friends of mine who have vegan dogs, and we're on the journey. But they're rescues, and they're all rescues from the street. So I please urge everyone, adopt, don't shop. There's so many dogs. Go to adoptapet.com. Put your zip code in, and there's hundreds and hundreds of dogs in every part of America that desperately need homes. So, yeah, but to get back to your point, you have a valid point. It's a struggle. If nobody's watching, then what are we doing it all for? And when we don't structure it in a way that's entertaining in the sense that it really attracts people to watch, then nobody's watching. Then all the work that we're doing is for naught, and then the show goes off the air. So what we try to do is make it compelling, and you get ratings every day to determine how can you get people into the tent to watch. So essentially, that's the way it is. But I think overall, if you consider it all, isn't this a better system that exists in China, where people are secretly tried, or anybody who tries to say anything about anything is arrested, or any other part of the world where we don't have a chance to see what's happening in the criminal justice system, or it's a charade. I mean, this is a really open, transparent system where we get to see what happens in court, and it informs our own lives. How many people have had situations where they've been arrested, or they get a summons, or they're sued? I mean, everybody needs to know how the court system operates, and it shouldn't just operate for the big cases this way. It should operate in a fair way for all cases. Now, I can't tell you how many times I've gone into court waiting for my big case to happen, and I see maybe 5 or 6 or 7 cases that are not famous people or not high-profile trials resolved so quickly you can't even tell what's happening. Mm-hmm. And, the lawyers and the judges all know each other, and they talk in code, and the poor defendant sitting there doesn't have any idea what's going on, and a deal's made, and it's basically, are you willing to accept this? And they don't know, yes, and then boop, off you go for 10, 15 years behind bars. I mean, it shouldn't be that way. I mean, there is definitely a two-tiered system of justice in this country. I've seen it over and over and over again. A rich, powerful person, mostly a person who's not a person of color, comes into court, or if they're rich and famous, they can be a person of color, but it's really a class thing. And they're treated completely differently by the court system than a poor person. Mm-hmm. And that's wrong. It really is. And, we have more people locked up in this country behind bars than any other country in the world, more than Russia or China. And a lot of these people haven't done horrible, horrible things. I mean, you can go to, I forget the organization right now, but if you Google it, there's mothers who were given a package by their boyfriend and turns out to be heroin, and they're sent to jail for I don't know how many years, and their families are left behind, and then they wonder, those kids end up getting into trouble, and they're in the criminal justice system too now. And how much is that costing the taxpayers? So I really think we have to revamp our criminal justice system and make it more equitable, and also take some of the money that we put into incarcerating so many people. I call it the prison industrial complex. How do you grow your business? Get more prisoners. There's even private prisons.
Right.
People don't even really know that. So we've got to take some of that money and put it into early intervention because really kids who are going to get in trouble are going to get in trouble. They can be their lives can be already too shattered to reconstruct very young. We're seeing 8-year-olds shooting people. We're seeing, I just covered a case yesterday where 17-year-old and a 14-year-old were accused of shooting a little baby through the eyes, holding up the mother.
Right.
I mean, this is wrong, but where does a kid get to that point, if in fact he's guilty, hasn't been convicted yet, of doing something like that? Well, let's put all our money into early childhood education to proactively prevent that situation from happening. The problem is you cannot take credit for a crime that was never committed. You can pull out all the stops and spend millions of dollars prosecuting somebody and then sticking them in jail for the rest of their lives, and you could say, I did my job. But when you prevent something from happening, it's very hard to take credit for it, except for declining crime rates. Now, there is that axiom that a small percentage of the population commits the vast majority of the crimes. Yes, hardcore criminals need to be locked up. I am totally for that. I cannot tell you how many times that we've seen people who should be locked up committing horrific crimes. They almost always have a record. Jodi Arias doesn't happen to have a record, but she needs to be locked up for the rest of her life. Absolutely. I mean, she committed a horrific crime. I'm against violence, and I'm against the violence she committed on Travis Alexander. And in my book, Exposed, I go into detail about why she did it, what her motives were, how she prepared for the crime, how she was trying to blackmail him using the sex tape. That's my theory, and I believe I make a compelling case.
Well, Jane Velez-Mitchell, her new book, Exposed: The Secret Life of Jodi Arias. It's available in stores now. I'll let Jane go so she can go to, doing her smoothie with her girlfriend there. Well, we'll have you back on, Jane, sometime. I appreciate you coming on the show, and good luck with the book.
All right. Well, thank you. It's available on Amazon. It's available at Walmart, and it's already a bestseller. And it's a good read, so I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you. Jane Velez-Mitchell. She's on HLN weeknights at 7 p.m. She seems pretty talkative, huh?
Oh, yeah.